You accept the love you think you deserve. I think there's a lot of people that feel like they're mistreated by relationships, spouses, friends, whatever it may be, or they envy other people's relationships with girls, friends, parents, etc., and they see them getting treated badly and they see other people getting treated well, and I wonder why that happens. And I think a huge part of it has to do with how you love yourself and how you respect yourself. So again, I think you accept the love that you think you deserve. Well, I'll give you an example. Let's talk about abusive relationships. Have you ever wondered why it's very easy for you to spot abuse in a relationship, and why a lot of the times that you tell someone they're in a bad relationship or that someone is treating them badly, they don't listen? Dude, I've had countless friends that have been in like terrible toxic relationships that, you try to warn to get out of it and they don't. And I've been on the receiving end of it where someone was being toxic towards me. My friends tried to tell me to leave and I didn't, because you don't ever truly realize you're in abuse until you're out of it. You don't really truly realize that someone is being abusive, and not even just abuse, but just being disrespectful or non-loving to you, unless you're from an outside perspective. Now, the reason for abuse specifically as to why a lot of people don't leave abuse is because for you, the abuse is easy to spot. If I'm a friend of yours telling you about how, let's say, my wife mistreats me, right? It's very easy for you to be like, oh, she's a bad person, divorce her, right? Because I'm telling you about the 10% of times that things are bad, but 90% of the time, things are good. And as humans, we don't know how to navigate life in terms of what's acceptable in a relationship and what's not, because every relationship is different, every person is different, every type of abuse is different, every type of love is different, right? There's no set in stone rule book that we have as to like, these are things that are acceptable and these are things that are not acceptable that you need to break up with them now if they do this. So because we don't have a rule book or a set in stone sort of thing that tells us when to leave and when not to leave, everybody creates their own. So naturally, your next question might be, well, how do they create their own? What do they create their own out of, right? They create the love they think they deserve by how much people love themselves, right? And because we don't have this rule of being told what's acceptable and what's not, a lot of it boils down to personal experience, right? If you have friends that are mistreating you, that are disrespectful to you, a lot of the times you might not even know it's disrespect or take it as disrespect, because this is the friend group you've grown up with your entire life, or these are the people that you've been around your entire life, or these are the cousins that you've known for 10 years. You just kind of think, oh, that's how they are, or this is something I should accept, right? Because this is supposedly normal. You'd be surprised how many people that you know that are in toxic relationships that accept it because they don't know that it's toxic, because it's all they've ever known, you know? If you have a kid that has never had any friends and has never seen any sort of media about how a family's supposed to look, and his dad is literally beating him every single day, and he has no other example of what a dad's supposed to do, he's not going to know that that's not acceptable, you know, because he's never seen otherwise. He's never seen a loving parent. Obviously, that scenario is extremely rare, right? But it just goes to show you that a huge reason as to like why people don't realize they're in abuse or they're being disrespected is because they haven't seen it any other way. So that's reason number one. But I think most of the time that people don't get the respect that they want or should have is because they think they deserve it, because they think they are inferior in some way. And you might think that this is something that only happens to a rare amount of people because it seems like something that's so huge, but most people do this. If you make a mistake or you do something wrong, a lot of times you'll go in your head and you'll talk down on yourself. You'll be like, damn, I'm a fucking idiot, or damn, I really shouldn't have done this, or like, damn, I'm stupid. You know, and you don't really think that that affects you because you think you're smart enough to let it not affect you. But your brain doesn't know the difference between when you tell it a joke and when you tell it a truth, or when you tell it a lie, you know? Your consciousness does, but most people's consciousness are tied to their brains because it's hard for them to observe their own thoughts without years of meditation or exposure therapy and things of that nature, right? And I'm not an expert. This is something that I'm just now getting into for like the past year of my life. But if you're constantly putting yourself down and disrespecting yourself, you're going to be way more likely to let other people do that because you've taught yourself that it's acceptable. If you call yourself an idiot every time you make a mistake, if somebody else calls you an idiot, you're way more likely to let that slide because you're conditioning yourself that it's okay to disrespect you in that way. So I think a huge reason as to why people are in bad situations, obviously aside from like outliers, is because they allow themselves to be, because they don't know any different and because they view themselves as inferior in some way. And I know this is true because there's this actual study that was done that was talking about how if you view someone subconsciously as superior to you, you're more likely to forgive their wrongdoings a lot more than if you view someone as inferior to you. If you view someone as inferior to you and they make a mistake, you almost hold that against them because you view them as inferior, so you think, of course they would do this, it's their character. If you view someone as superior to you and they make a mistake, you think, well, you know, they make mistakes, but so does everybody, and, you know, they're a really good person at the end of the day, so I won't hold it against them. And I don't know if you've caught on, but what I exactly said is how a lot of abuse victims talk. A lot of abuse victims will be in abusive households where things get physical or verbal or emotional abuse, whatever it may be. And then you tell them, like, dude, that's abuse. Like, that's not okay. And they'll be like, yeah, but like most of the time it's not like that. And it's only happened once or twice. And he told me he would stop. And, you know, this isn't trying to victim blame or anything like that. I too have been around the block and been in the receiving end of said abuse. So I don't want anybody to think that that's my intention. I'm not saying it's the victim's fault that they're in abuse. But I'm saying you are more likely to be more accepting of abuse for longer periods of time than average if you view yourself as somebody who is okay to abuse in the first place, because you view somebody as superior to you, or because you think that you can be disrespected because you disrespect yourself on a consistent basis, right? So naturally, the way to get around this is to love yourself and respect yourself more. If you had more self-love and respect, you wouldn't tolerate disrespect, because you wouldn't ever disrespect yourself the way that other people would disrespect you, which inherently means that your love and respect for yourself is inherently the measuring stick that you use on how to let other people treat you. And that's why the saying goes, you accept the love that you think you deserve. If you want to be around people that respect you more and you want to gain more respect from the average person, you have to respect yourself more. If respect and love are tied in some certain ways, which they are, then the exact same thing goes for love as well. Now, building self-respect and self-love are two very different things, even though they are pretty innately tied together in how they interact. So now that you know what the problem is, let's talk about how to actually solve it. I think the way that you can build love for yourself more, so that you expect people to love you in a way that you want more, is to let yourself exist as yourself as much as yourself can allow yourself to exist. That sounds like a whole lot of nothing, but let me explain. You need to do hobbies that you enjoy more. You need to create art and have an artistic outlet. You need to spend time with people that you enjoy spending time with, that make you happy. You need to be caring about your future, right? And these might seem obvious, and these might seem like things that you're already doing. And that brings me into my next point. A lot of people that don't think that they love themselves do love themselves. They're just telling themselves that they don't love themselves in their head, which over time will actually make you not love yourself more. And the reason that most people don't realize they love themselves is because they don't realize the things that they are doing as an act of self-love are acts of self-love. For example, if you wake up every day in the morning and you do a skincare routine and you take out your trash and you shower, that is self-love. As simple as it may seem, there are people that don't do that because they don't love themselves in that specific way to do that, right? This can go for your personal hobbies too. If you have a hobby of drawing, if you have a hobby of skateboarding, if you have a hobby of making YouTube videos, doing that hobby is a form of self-love. Any sort of artistic, creative expression as well is some sort of love towards yourself, because I think in essence what art is the expression of human emotion in a physical outlet, right? And letting yourself express emotion is self-love. Doing any sort of activities, caring about your future, it's all self-love, right? And these are all things that I'm sure you do daily, maybe not as much as you want, but a huge part as to why people don't realize they love themselves is because they don't realize they love themselves, right? I don't think a lot of people that think they hate themselves actually really hate themselves. I'm not saying that people don't hate themselves, you know what I mean? I think mental battles that you go through with yourself far exceed in difficulty battles that you'll ever go through with any enemy you ever face. But I do think that a lot of people are telling themselves a story of, I hate myself, I hate my life, I don't like that I'm introverted, I don't like this about myself, when in reality, you telling yourself that is what's making you not like yourself. Does that make sense? And once you actually start to zoom out and appreciate the effort you already are putting into yourself to love yourself, the more you're actually able to want to love yourself more and go do those things more. That's why when a lot of people want to commit sewer slide, a lot of the times what therapists recommend they do is to do gratitude journaling. It seems so corny, but the appreciation of the things you do for yourself make you realize, I do love myself, I do like my life, I'm just not viewing it from a perspective that would allow me to see that every single day. And I think it ties into respect as well, right? Just like the more that you love yourself for the things that you do, you're going to respect yourself for the things that you do as well, right? The more you respect yourself by not breaking good habits or by breaking bad habits, not lying to yourself, not talking bad about yourself, the more self-respect that you have for yourself, the more trust in yourself you're going to have too. If I know that when I have a thought of I need to go do the dishes, if I know that when I think that I immediately go do them, I'm going to trust myself more that when I have thoughts, I'm able to listen to them and act on them accordingly, right? Having any sort of self-respect or self-discipline is really hard when you don't trust yourself. A lot of people have thoughts of like, oh my God, I need to go do the dishes. I need to go do homework. You know, that person said something to me. I don't think I should tolerate that. I should probably speak up on that and set a boundary. A lot of people have thoughts of like, I need to set boundaries. I need to take care of responsibilities, and they don't end up doing them. And that makes you less likely to do them in the future because you're going to take yourself less seriously and trust yourself less because you know if you have a feeling or you have a thought or you have a boundary, it can be broken by yourself, right? And this ties into how you let people treat you. If you respect yourself and love yourself more, you are not going to tolerate bullshit from other people. I'm going to use a metaphor here to break down the past 2 minutes of what I've been saying to make it a little bit easier. Let's say you own a broke down Honda Civic. This thing's got 200,000 miles on it, and you're honestly looking for another one, and you're probably going to have a new car in 2 weeks, right? This is not a car you care about. If you don't care about the car, chances are you're not really going to give a shit if your friends take your hubcaps off as a joke or start eating In-N-Out in your backseat, right? And the only reason they do that is because they know based off of how you treat the car that they're allowed to treat the car a certain way. If they see you smoking in your car, they're more likely to ask to spark up themselves. But if you pull up in a car that's very well maintained, you set boundaries that, hey, this is how you're going to treat my car, and if you're not, I'm not going to drive you places, they're not going to treat your car poorly. So I want to reiterate again, I'm not victim blaming when I'm saying that like people don't love you because you don't love yourself. I'm really not trying to like victim blame, but I'm saying if you don't set boundaries for how people love you and how people respect you, they're not going to follow the boundaries because the boundaries don't fucking exist, right? So you only accept love you think you deserve, which means on the very opposite end of that pendulum, you're only going to accept love if people meet a certain criteria of yours, which sounds picky, but it's the only way that you can maintain self-respect at that point. And that's why like having self-respect makes it so much easier for you to accept more healthy and more authentic love, almost as if it's like attracted to you, because you're only going to accept people fitting of how you would treat yourself. And that's why, again, inherently, I say you accept the love you think you deserve, negative and positive. You could also tie the law of attraction into this. The law of attraction is a theory that the more you're thinking about something and the more that you believe in something, the more likely it is to happen in your real life. And it's not necessarily because you're changing reality in some sort of way, but it's more so because you're going out of your way to notice it, you know? That's why when you get a new car, you notice that car fucking everywhere now. You know what I mean? When I was like 12 and my mom bought a Ford Focus, I didn't even know that was a car that existed, and then she bought one and I saw them everywhere. So you might be worried that if you respect yourself and love yourself to a certain extent that nobody's going to meet your new criteria, right? But if it's something that you realize is possible, you're more likely to see it. So you attract the things that you naturally are. That's what the law of attraction is. You attract things that you are on the same frequency, on the same wavelength, on the same emotional level as, because you notice it because it's where you are. And I think that's another huge reason. I know me personally, this was a big thing for me when I was younger, about why people accept abuse or bad love in certain instances is because they're afraid that they're not going to find somebody that is like them or even better than them, right? A huge reason why people in school accept toxic friends is because they're afraid that they're not going to have any friends and that they can't make friends outside of the friend group they already have, you know? A lot of lonely men that have only dated one person are really scared to break up with their girlfriend that abuses them because, like I said earlier, they don't know that it's abuse because they don't know any different, but also because they're scared that if they lose that girl, they're never going to find another one, especially one that treats them better. But if you respect yourself, you will attract the people that respect you. It may take time, it may take effort, but it is well worth it. And so I'll say it for like the 70th time in this video. I promise you I'm not victim blaming. I'm not saying that if anybody is in abuse, it is their fault. I'm just saying it's much more likely that you accept abuse if you don't hold yourself to a certain standard. That's all. So love yourself, respect yourself, and try to improve yourself every single day. And everything around you will change. I'll see you later.